somebody raise your hand. Anyway, hope everybody's doing well and getting ready for our next snowfall. I understand we've got a nor'easter coming this weekend, so fun. But anyway, hope everybody's healthy. That's the most important thing. So moving forward, I guess the first thing we need to do is approve the minutes from our last. Actually, do you want to do roll call first, Elizabeth?
Yeah. So Anne, if you could move on to the next slide, please. Oh, yeah. So before we get started, actually, I think we're going to introduce a new staff member. And I will defer to Anne or Colin, who's on the call, to do that. I don't know who is going to introduce. We're very excited to have someone new on board.
That's Kate.
Actually, that's me.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Kate Jaffe. I am the Administrator of Preservation Financial Incentives here at the Trust, and it's my pleasure to introduce Ivy Weeks to you all. She will be serving as our new Capital Programs Administrator. There's no photo of Ivy there, but she did pop up on your screen so that you can see her in the flesh. And you're very funny. I like the addition of Ivy there. So she will be replacing Charlotte Lake as the being the manager of the Maryland Historical Trust Capital Grant Program, the Capital Loan Program, and the African American Heritage Preservation Program. She comes to us from the private sector. Actually, we snagged one, and she served as a construction project manager for over 9 years, doing historic properties, historic residential, commercial, and ecclesiastical buildings up and down the eastern seaboard. She originally hails from Orlando, Florida, graduating from College of Charleston with a BA in historic preservation and community planning. And she moved up here about 2 years ago with her now new husband, Mike, and their golden doodle rescue named Dolly Pardon, which I really enjoy. So we're very excited to have her here. First day was yesterday, so we're bringing her on board very quickly, and are excited for her to take hold of the new grant round coming up for the African American Heritage grants coming up. So that is Ivy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Welcome, Ivy. We are delighted to have you join MHT and look forward to working with you.
You too. I'm here to help.
Do you have anything that you would like to say before we move on?
No, I'm just glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you. So thanks so much. Okay, Elizabeth, you want to do the roll call?
Yes. So we can move on to the next slide. Thanks, Anne. And I will call the roll. And this will be alphabetical, going through the trustees and then the area representatives. So trustees, Sheila Bashiri.
Here.
Joshua Brown.
Here.
Jeffrey Buchheit.
Here. Sorry, I was on mute. Here.
I saw you. James Delgado.
Here.
Julie Ernstein.
Present. Good morning.
Al Feldstein.
Here.
Sarah Filkins.
Here.
Rodney Little.
Here.
Barbara Peka.
Here.
Sam Parker. Franklin Robinson.
Here.
Then area representatives, Marty Azola.
Here.
Dean Camlin.
Here.
Dick Charlton. Sakina Linder.
Here.
Doug Reed.
I'm here.
Lisa Sasser.
Here.
Harry Spikes.
Happy to be here.
Charlie Steck. Kirsty Unula,
Here.
Senator Neal, Senator West, and Delegate Gilchrist. All three of them had said they were not going to be able to participate at this meeting. So we do have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from our December 9th board meeting. Everybody should have gotten that in the packet that was sent out to you via email. Had a chance, hopefully, to look it over. Does anybody have any questions, corrections to the minutes? If not, can we have a motion to approve?
I'll just ask that we have separate motions, one for the open minutes and one for the set of closed minutes.
Right. So this will be for the open meeting.
So approved.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the open meeting minutes from December 9th?
Aye.
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 Any opposition? Okay, motion carries. And then we have the minutes from the closed session on December 9th.
Motion to approve.
Any,
This is
thank
Doug.
you, Franklin.
Sorry, didn't mean to jump the gun there.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes from the closed session on December 9th?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion to approve the minutes is carried. So we will move on then to, Elizabeth, we don't have anybody signed up for public comment, do we?
No, we do not.
Very good. Okay, so then we will move on to committee reports. And I believe the first one is capital program. And Ann, you're going to be presenting.
Yes, I hope that my internet connection will support this for a few minutes. Good morning, everybody. So a few resolutions in your packet. The first one expands the delegated ability of the director to terminate certain types of easements. As you know, in part prompted by the request for the joint chairman's report a couple of years ago on the easement program, we've been trying to identify ways to reduce our easement portfolio in reasonable ways. And so we previously have had you, as a board, consider resolutions related to terminating other types of easements, including loans that were repaid. That was one category. And so at this time, we've identified another small but still meaningful category of easement that we would like to seek authority to terminate. And that is easements resulting from the transfer of property out of state ownership when the property is not individually listed or individually eligible for the National Register. So we have a list of about 9 properties that fall into this category. Of those, and there's further detail in your packet in the background, of those, I think we can safely say that the preservation intent has been fulfilled. Many of the properties are going to remain under local protection. Few of the easements had positive work requirements in them that have been fulfilled. And we have held most of those easements for decades. And while we are going to retain easements resulting from state property transfer on properties that are individually listed or eligible, we recommend terminating easements on those which are not individually listed or eligible. And so, let me see if I can go forward. Just from the resolution, I just wanted to highlight what the changes are, because I've included the entire resolution from last time and just underlined the portions that have changed. So the portion that has changed here gives us a window to terminate some of the easements that we've received through state property transfer, which goes through 106 or review under the MHT Act. And then under number 2, this clarifies that those are properties that are not individually listed or individually eligible. So I hope that's clear the way it's laid out in the resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Ann on this? No? Okay, then we need a motion to pass this resolution.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
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 Any opposition? Anybody abstaining? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Ann.
Just as a point of clarification, who seconded? Was that Doug? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, this is good.
So that was the harder one. I have an easier one. Okay, so our second resolution. Our second resolution is kind of a cleanup of something that we should have included before but did not. So in our past discussions about changing our easement policy in certain circumstances going forward, we said that we were going to term limit easements based on the amount of funding received. We never said to you that we were also going to hopefully apply that to preservation agreements. So we take an easement on real property for which there are deeds in the land record. So we record a deed of easement in the land record. But for certain types of structures or artifacts that we may fund, there is not a mechanism to record anything in the land records. And in those cases, instead of an easement, we have a preservation agreement. And so we felt that the difference was worth bringing to you to make sure that this is also clearly established, that for preservation agreements, they are term limited now with a minimum term of 15 years. And there's also, as we discussed, I think in the last meeting, there is a cap on the term at 50 years for preservation agreements. So this is just making sure we've covered our bases there and have those approved. We had a couple of them in the works, and then we sort of stopped and said, wait a minute, I think we need to clean this up. So that is what that is. Any questions?
Could you give me an example of what what's a preservation agreement? What does it cover?
Yeah, so preservation agreement, it usually provides the same terms as far as MHT's approval of the work, the condition that the property needs to be maintained in, what constitutes a breach, and so forth. But the difference is that whereas on a building that sits on a parcel of land, you can record a deed of easement in the land records, for other types of properties that we might fund, such as we had at one time a preservation agreement on a train engine. We have had preservation agreements on bridges that don't really have land. We've had preservation agreements on moved buildings where we can't or don't need to protect the parcel. So we don't, it doesn't happen all that often. I would say like maybe 3% of our easement portfolio is actually preservation agreements, but it does happen.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, thanks, Ann. Does anybody else have any questions for Ann? Okay, if we don't have any questions or any discussion, then can we have a motion to approve the resolution?
This is Trustees. So moved.
Thank you.
And I second, Jeff. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, this motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Ann. Okay. So Franklin, Monument Relocation Working Group.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. So, as you have probably read or know, Baltimore has written a letter to LAX Art declining their offer. And the trust has sent a response letter. And what I can say is that we are still working this issue, and we've asked for clarification, and talks with the city continue. So happy to take any questions that I can answer.
Any questions, anybody? No?
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you, Franklin. Appreciate it. Let's see, what is next? Survey registration, community education. Here we go. Okay. So Elizabeth, you have a report on your own actions.
Right, we didn't have any reports for the survey registration and so forth. The committee said we're on to management and planning. And this is simply to let you know that the executive committee did meet on January 11th, and they did take action on a resolution which would identify who the signatories are on behalf of the board when it comes to the board's investment fund, which is managed by Brown Advisory. The information that Brown Advisory had named the former chair, it was simply out of date. And so the signatories that were identified were the MHT director, deputy director, board chair, and board treasurer. And 2 people must sign any action that goes to Brown Advisory as a checks and balances system. So that action was taken simply as really just a paperwork matter in terms of caring for the board's investment fund.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Anybody have any questions about this? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. Everybody's quiet today. All right, investment committee report. Dan?
Sam, you're on mute.
Thanks, everybody. The investment committee continues to meet a little more frequently, just to monitor the investment climate. And so that being said, because of the volatility, that being said, our last year performance is actually very good. Our main fund increased in value by 13.4%, and MARPAT and the Patterson funds increased by 13.9%. I'm sure we're all aware of what's been happening in the stock market, and with the interest rates from the Feds being considered going up, and inflation, all those things. But our investment policy, I think, is doing us quite well. We continue to monitor our asset allocation divisions and how we invest in certain classes, and to spread our risk over a number of different classes of investments. And that is allowing us, I think, to have a good position, to have a strong fund, and to continue to increase the value of our investments. So even with all the things going on, we're doing, I think, quite well, and very satisfied with Brown Advisory and how they are managing our funds. So if anybody has any questions, I'm glad to take them.
Thank you, Sam. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Well, we're moving right along then. I think this might be the shortest meeting we've ever had. Equity Working Group report, Sam.
Well, actually, I don't really have anything at this moment. We're continuing to work on a survey. I think we will get out to the board and to the staff, and also how we're going to handle some training to both the board and the staff. But we had to delay our meeting for this month, and so I'll have more at our next meeting. So short and sweet.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. So budget and legislation.
Yes, so as you know, the General Assembly is in session and the governor has released the operating and capital budget, which we were excited to see. So I just wanted to share with you where we are when it comes to funding for our various programs that you're familiar with, as well as some bills that are of interest that have been introduced so far this session, although we're still pretty early in the session, so there's likely lots more to come. So very good news on the budget front. You can see that our signature programs have all been level funded. I would say that we will expect that, well, we'll go through one by one. African American Heritage Preservation Grant Program, $1 million for those bricks and mortar grants. The Capital Historic Preservation Grant Program, $600,000. I will add that in the out years, we would expect to see that fund increase to $1 million starting in fiscal year 2026. So that's in the capital improvement program that shows the forecast for out years. We'll see that program increase. Presumably that will happen. The Capital Historic Preservation Loan Program funded at $300,000. Heritage areas at $6 million. As you may recall, there's a provision in the statutory language now where the Secretary of the Department of Planning may allocate up to $300,000 from the Heritage Areas Financing Fund to be used for non-capital historic preservation grants. Presumably he will do that again this year, but that's up to the Secretary to make that determination. The non-capital grants used to be funded with general funds out of the budget. Insofar as they're now coming out of the Heritage Areas grant allocation, that's special funds that's funded with real estate transfer taxes. The State Historic Revitalization Tax Credit Program for the competitive commercial side of the program is going to see an increase this year. For the past couple of years, it's been funded at $9 million a year. This year, it's being increased to $12 million. So that's very exciting to see. And then we have two large capital projects that are happening at Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum and have been planned for some time. We have the last tranche of money for the Patterson Center renovation project of $124,000. The total that has been allocated for that rehabilitation of the Patterson House and related outbuildings is $11.6 million. So we've seen funding come into the budget in prior fiscal years to come to that, that final total. And we're expecting at this point to see construction begin early in the summer. And I know Greg Pierce, reports on activities at Jeff Pat regularly, and he'll have updates on that as they come forward in subsequent meetings. But I know that's very exciting for all of us to see because it's been a long time coming. Rodney probably in particular, who has, watched that project develop over many years. The expansion of the Mac Lab, Becky Morehouse and Tricia Sanford tell us that really we are almost full at the Mac Lab now because of the archaeological collections that we've continued to accept. So this expansion is timed very well. We have the total for that project is going to be $13 million. This year we have $3.5 million in the budget, but in prior year we have $1.5 million and we'll see $8 million next year. So that's going to be another really big and really necessary capital project at Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum. So the capital budget for us is looking very good. All of our grant programs being fully funded, and that's just really exciting to see. In terms of bills of interest, always we tend to see a number of pieces of legislation to tweak in one way or another the historic revitalization tax credit program, the state tax credit program. There are 3 right now. The first of those, House Bill 27, will do a number of things. It has a companion bill. It was introduced early, so the legislators are very keen on seeing it move forward. For one thing, it will extend the program for 7 years to 2031. It also requires increased appropriations. So 12 million in fiscal year 23, the coming year, and 24, but then a significant increase, a doubling to 24 million in 25 and 26, and then an increase to 36 million in 27 and 31. And I will say that while we're limited in the extent to which we can comment on any of these bills because it's not administration legislation, we were pleased to see that folks heard us, that we did not want to see significant increases that happen all at once. This graduated increase in the appropriation is what we prefer, because not only does it help the developers really plan their projects and come in with good projects, but it also helps us from a staffing standpoint so that we can staff up to deal with increases in the money that we're going to be giving away, presumably through the tax credit program. In this bill, there's also a change to the small commercial component of the tax credit program. Those are projects that are $500,000 or less that would not compete well in the competitive commercial component of the tax credit program. Right now, it's an authorized program. It's authorized up to a certain amount of money every year, as opposed to us receiving in our budget a set appropriation. But the way this legislation is written, that would change that so that, in fact, it would be an appropriated program going forward, and we would be required to receive up to $4 million annually from fiscal year 24. So it wouldn't start next year, but in 24 through 31. I will mention that we are out of money in that small commercial component of the program. You may recall we received an increase of, I think it was $1 million last year at the start of the fiscal year, and we've already used up those funds. So you can see that it's a very popular and effective component of the program for which there will be significant demand. So I think the $4 million is not an inappropriate sort of ask, but that bill is going to be really, that would make a tremendous difference to our historic tax credit program. We'll just have to see how it proceeds through session. The second one there, House Bill 202, this would deal specifically with the owner-occupied residential component of the tax credit program. And it's designed to make the program more user-friendly for lower-income households. And it would reduce the required expenditure threshold from $5,000 to $2,500 for certain types of folks who receive already the homestead property tax credit. House Bill 539 also deals with the residential, owner-occupied residential component of the program only, and it would increase the amount of the credit from 20% on rehabilitation expenditures, which it is across the board for all of the programs, owner-occupied, small, and competitive, up to 25% for the owner-occupied residential only. So the idea is to make the program more effective for the residential users, who are a much smaller impact on the state budget in terms of what that costs the state. So that 20 to 25% bump up would make a difference to the homeowner, but wouldn't have a substantial impact on the state budget. So those are the 3 tax credit bills that we're looking at right now, and we'll see how they proceed through the session. Any questions?
I have a question. Not on the bills per se, but I was curious about the commercial tax credit and the homeowner tax credit, where that money's going and who's getting it. I don't know if you all put together any statistics for this legislation or not, to be interested in seeing.
You know, we could provide that. I'm sure that Colin is on the call and he may have just some anecdotal information, but we can always sort of provide that in a mapped way too. We certainly do that with the competitive commercial tax credits. And I think it's in some ways it's more helpful to show visually where the money is going through mapping. But Colin, if you're still on, is there anything you want to say, particularly I think about the residential, but either of the programs?
Sure, Elizabeth. I don't think we've been asked to this year, but we occasionally do some mapping on this. But I would also say that if you go to our web page for the tax credits, there is a link there to the ABLE report, which is a report that was worked with in conjunction with Preservation Maryland. It's about 2 years out of date, where they update, and they have done working with statisticians on really doing a deeper dive into where and by whom the credits are being used over time. And there is also a legislative report, which is now about 5 years out, but it really hasn't changed significantly how our program runs. And I could also have Elizabeth link that in for you or send it out otherwise, where we did a several 100-page report and analysis through legislative services, which really graphed basically everything from income to distribution and use of credits, et cetera. So we have a lot of background information and don't really do that on a year-to-year basis, but we have been doing this over the life of the program at various times for different purposes, both internal measurement of the advocacy for the program, as well as outside analysis from people like the ABLE Foundation or Preservation Maryland. And we can make those available as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Does anybody else have any questions? I think this is exciting. This is good news. So, anybody? Okay, well then we will move on to litigation and legal issues.
Hi there. The only thing to report is that for the Confederate Monuments case, the hearing on the motion for summary judgment will be held May 2nd. We might have already been reported that, but that's the only update.
Okay, very good. Does anybody have any questions for Rhiannon before we move forward? Okay. Other than that, we have announcements. Obviously, you all can read this for yourself, plus it was included in the information that you received. And I guess our next meeting is, what is the date of the next meeting, Elizabeth? March? I should have that in front of me, but I don't. I don't know. I have to. I can't.
March 10th.
Yeah, March 10th, yeah.
March 10th.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if we'll be able to meet in person by then or not. Who knows? We may just keep doing it this way. It is getting a little old, but it's convenient. But at the same time, it's lacking in that personal interaction here. So I think that is all we have for today then. Does anybody have any announcements, any last minute questions before we adjourn? Okay, well, hearing none, I will adjourn the meeting, and I thank you all so very much, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day and week and month and year.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Take care.